This story begins in the post-apocalyptic times. Late at night, sounds of howling and growling were heard in the abandoned factory. The protagonist, Zhang Xiaoyang, a black-haired guy, was suspended by his arms, while a crowd of people below watched him with smiles. Under the guy's feet, there was a cage containing the walking dead. The girl with long black hair named Kueijing chuckled and called out to Xiaoyang. She said that all the guy's friends were already dead. Jing asked if there was anything left that kept him alive. Xiaoyang could only think that all his friends died because of him. The guy lost his temper and shouted at the girl that she was a snake who deserved the most miserable death. Jing immediately pressed herself against the dark-haired man's shoulder and complained that she was being treated rudely. The man said that Xiaoyang would die a painful death for this and thanked him for the supplies. After that, he pressed the button on the remote control and cut the rope that Xiaoyang was hanging on. The guy fell into a cage with dead people and they immediately rushed towards him. Xiaoyang's hands were tied, and he was unable to resist as the monsters tore him apart. Dying in the hands of the dead, the boy thought that if he had another chance, he would make Jing pay for it. Darkness fell, from which Xiaoyang was torn away by loud screams. The guy saw a girl standing in front of him asking why her name was not on the property documents. Xiaoyang glanced around the room and realized that he had returned to the time before the apocalypse. Last time, Jing deceived him and not only stole all of his parents' inheritance, but also threw him out into the street. Later, the whole world plunged into chaos. People began to turn into zombies. Most of the population died and rose again to destroy the remaining survivors. Xiaoyang found new friends, created a safe haven, and was able to survive in the new world. However, the guy allowed himself to be deceived by Jing, who came to them and played on their pity. In fact, it was a trick set up by their enemies. Now, Xiaoyang looked at his ex-fiancée again with his cold blue eyes. Jing reminded that the guy should not forget about the bride price, which should be no less than 400,000 yuan. Xiaoyang tried to control himself and not give in to his emotions. Instead of answering Jing's questions, the guy said he understood everything and pushed her out the door. The girl looked at the door that closed behind her and couldn't understand when So-yun became so self-confident. The guy was glad that he managed to remain in silence. Walking deeper into the apartment, Xiaoyang looked at the table clock with the date. Seeing the date, the guy realized that there was only a month left until the apocalypse, so he needed to prepare for the disaster. Something unusual caught Xiaoyang's attention. A system window appeared in front of the guy, which said that he had a task about preparing for the apocalypse. Xiaoyang saw that points were given as a reward for completing tasks, so he decided to go to the system store. At that moment, the guy was disturbed by a loud rumbling stomach. Xiaoyang had completely forgotten that in his previous life, he had constantly starved and suffered in order to save money to study with Jing. The guy walked up to the table and took his phone from it. Xiaoyang logged into the delivery app and thought about trying more delicious food before the apocalypse hit. The guy placed an order and enjoyed relaxing while the food was being delivered. Soon, the table was laden with plates of food from a 3-Michelin-starred restaurant. Xiaoyang was curious to know what the 300 yuan braised pork tasted like. The guy took one piece with his chopsticks and brought it to his mouth. Xiaoyang jumped up on the sofa, saying that this was the most delicious thing he had ever given her in his life. The guy immediately pounced on the food, shoving as many different dishes into his mouth as possible. Xiaoyang was distracted from his dinner by a ringing phone lying nearby on the table. The guy looked at the screen and realized that Jing had complained to her friend Shuya. The friend immediately started shouting that the guy had behaved very badly and now he had to bring 1,000,000 yuan and the house register. Xiaoyang started shouting back, asking who he and Jing thought they were to cause such a scene for him. Shuya tried to say something, but the guy quickly hung up. Xiaoyang leaned back on the sofa and took a deep breath. The guy thought that he urgently needed to buy a plot of land near a forest and water in order to build a fortress there. The next day, Xiaoyang went to the real estate company to take care of the land. The guy was met by a co-worker named Xiaoning, who first asked him whether he wanted to buy a house or rent one. Xiaoyang wanted to explain to the girl what he needed, but they were interrupted by a senior employee. Sales manager Zhu approached Xiaoning and told her that she needed to go to the warehouse and help with the delivery. The girl wanted to say that she was busy, but Zhu pushed her towards the utility room, saying that she should listen to him. The man glanced at Xiaoyang and said that such a loser in rags wouldn't even be able to buy a toilet, so there was no point in wasting time. However, Xiaoyang was not going to leave it like that and asked how dare a man look down on people. Manager Zhu turned around and said that he didn't see people here but an ordinary mongrel. The man said that if Xiaoyang buys at least a toilet, he will eat waste on stream. Xiaoyang promised to help the manager find fresh waste. The guy took a black card out of his pocket and said that he didn't come here to buy a house or rent one. Xiaoyang said he was going to buy land. All the employees were very surprised since only the truly rich could afford to buy land. Xiaoning returned to Xiaoyang again and asked him to follow her so they could discuss everything. Manager Zhu told them afterward that everyone knows how to brag and they would wait until it was time to pay. Xiaoning sat the guy down in a chair and handed him documents with the prices of all the lands that were currently available for purchase. Xiaoyang didn't take the folder and said that it would be easier if he listed his conditions and the girl would say if there was anything suitable. The guy said he needed a plot of land near rivers and mountains, with a running water source, and with roads and large buildings nearby. After listening to all the demands, Xiaoning thought for a few moments. Manager Zhu came closer and said that there was one site in the Beijing area, but the girl was against it since the conditions there were bad. The man chuckled and said that Xiaoyang had made such demands on purpose so that they wouldn't be able to find anything for him. The guy was interested in the proposed plot, but Xiaoning said that there was an abandoned building nearby which was unsafe. Xiaoyang picked up the documents and glanced at the information, thinking that this area was quite suitable for him. The guy handed the papers to Xiaoning and said that he was ready to sign the purchase and sale agreement and would pay immediately. The girl bowed and apologized, but a second later she realized what Xiaoyang had said. Xiaoning asked if he was sure of his choice, to which the guy answered positively and reminded him of Manager Zhu's promise. Soon, the paperwork and payment were completed, and Manager Zhu was looking at the payment receipt. The man couldn't believe that someone would spend $300,000 on a site with an unfinished factory. Xiaoyang patted Manager Zhu on the shoulder and promised to buy a paid subscription to his channel if he ate the garbage with pleasure. All the employees immediately started making fun of the man, saying that they were already turning on the stream. The system sent a notification that Xiaoyang had completed one of the quest items. As he left the building, the guy thought that the money for the bride price had gone down the drain. But now, he needed to think about supplies. Xiaoyang didn't notice a familiar man named Lishu, who would help Jing kill him in the future. The man immediately noticed him, but did not understand what he was doing in a real estate agency. Near the building, he noticed employees filming how they were trying to feed Manager Zhu scraps. Meanwhile, Jing was sitting at home painting her nails. The girl was distracted from her activity by a phone call. Jing called Lishu, who told him that Xiaoyang had been to the real estate agency and bought land. The girl immediately jumped up and slammed the table, asking where the guy got the money. Lishu assumed that it was the bride price money, which made Jing furious as she already considered the money hers. By this time, Xiaoyang himself had returned home and was thinking about where he could get money to buy supplies and build a base. After some time, there was a loud knock on the door. Xiaoyang opened the door and saw Jing with his girlfriend, who asked how he could use her money to buy land. The guy couldn't stand the girl and asked what she was talking about. Jing said that the land was bought with money intended for her, which means the land now belongs to her. Xiaoyang asked if the girl had gotten anything wrong. Tapping the stack of money on Jing's shoulder, the guy said that he had enough money, but she wouldn't get anything out of it. Xiaoyang said that she should remember this and pass this information on to Lishu. Jing couldn't understand how the guy could have found out about her affair with another man. Shuya intervened and said that it was a normal misunderstanding between a couple, but Xiaoyang replied that they were no longer dating. The guy slammed the door in front of them, and Jing didn't understand how he could have found out about Lishu if they were always extremely careful. The girls walked towards the elevator, and Shuya asked why her friend hadn't told her that she and Lishu were having an affair. Jing replied that they had only rented a room a few times. Shuya said that everything was out of control, so they should go back and think about what to do next. Jing replied that they had nothing else to do and walked into the elevator as the doors opened. Shuya looked at the girl from behind predatorily and thought that she would no longer hold back since she also wanted to grab her piece. After some time, Xiaoyang headed to the purchase site with the construction team. The guy asked how long it would take to renovate the abandoned factory. Foreman opened the construction plant and showed it to Xiaoyang. The man listed the things that needed to be done to strengthen the walls, erect watchtowers, stretch barbed wire, and install doors. Xiaoyang said that all this needed to be done within a month, but the foreman replied that they were unlikely to be able to complete it in that time. The guy said that in that case he would find those who could handle this task, and then Li said that a lot of money would be needed. Xiaoyang said to name a specific amount, and then the foreman showed 2 fingers. The builders needed 20 million in advance so they could start work. Xiaoyang said he would transfer the money within a week so they could start work. The guy promised that he would give them the land if he could not pay the entire promised amount. At that moment, Shuya arrived at the site and approached Xiaoyang with a smile on her face. The girl pressed herself against the guy, grabbed his hand, and asked what he was doing. Xiaoyang looked at Suyu, who in his previous life had incited Jing to deceive him. The guy looked at the girl angrily and asked what she was doing. Suyu hugged Xiaoyang's hand and asked if he wanted to build a villa on the site. The guy jerked his hand away and said that it was none of her business. Suyu didn't understand why Xiaoyang, who used to be embarrassed by just one touch, started acting like this. The guy left the girl alone and went to the foreman, saying that the gate should be wider. Suyu tried to call Xiaoyang, but it was all in vain. The girl understood that she should not miss this chance while Xiaoyang and Jing were in a quarrel. Closer to night, Xiaoyang returned home and began to think about where he would get the missing money for construction. The guy remembered that the apocalypse was coming soon, and therefore it wouldn't be a big deal if he sold his house several times. Xiaoyang decided that this was the best option at the moment. At that moment, they started knocking on the door and demanding that it be opened. It was Li's neighbor, who had long wanted to buy the third floor from Xiaoyang so that he could own the building entirely. As soon as the guy opened the door, the neighbor began accusing him of spending entire nights at the club. Xiaoyang said to stop shouting because he went to bed before 10 o'clock, so there was no talk of any clubs. The neighbor continued to swear, and then the guy waved his hand and said that he had enough and he would sell the house. The man immediately revealed his hidden intentions when he exclaimed joyfully. Xiaoyang turned to him again and said that he had one condition. The guy said that his new house would be under construction for another 6 months, so he would live here until then. But he needed an advance payment. Xiaoyang demanded 5 million, but when he saw his neighbor's surprised look, he began to close the door, saying that he could forget about it. The neighbor grabbed the door and said that he only agreed if they signed a contract. Xiaoyang was glad that he had managed to deceive this old man, and he wished for him to die in this house. The very next day they signed a contract, and the neighbor transferred 5 million to the guy. Now Xiaoyang had 5 million and could complete the task and get the reward, after which he went to the store. Xiaoyang ran around the store with carts, filling them with supplies for the whole year. Customers were scared of him and tried not to come close, thinking that the guy had simply gone crazy. Once the cart was full, he would take them back to the pile and get a new one to fill it up again. Soon there were a dozen overflowing carts standing next to the checkout counters. Customers didn't understand why he needed so many products, and some assumed that Xiaoyang was just another fool who believed in the end of the world. The system sent a message that the guy had completed the task, after which he began to think about what to buy with the points. Without thinking twice, Xiaoyang decided to buy the protagonist's box because it cost exactly 10 points. The system store debited the guy's points from his balance and gave him the purchase. The box contained a ring of space that could contain 500 square meters of space where time stood still. Xiaoyang looked at the characteristics and realized that he had hit the jackpot on his first try. Since time did not flow in this space, the guy was able to keep all the food fresh. A few moments later, the system announced the next task, which was to purchase supplies for 10 years. At that moment, the store manager, who had been called in because of Xiaoyang's strange behavior, approached the cash register. Coming closer, it became clear that the manager and the guy were already acquainted. One glance was enough for Xiaoyang to remember his former classmate Yang Tao, who was a bully's pawn at school. At school, they often had squabbles as Tao tried to squeeze money out of the guy, but he did not give in to pressure. At the moment, Xiaoyang remained in place and listened to unflattering words from his acquaintance. Tao ordered the guy to return all the goods to their place while he spoke to him nicely. Xiaoyang smiled and asked if the guy really greeted customers in his store like that. However, this phrase only made Tao laugh. He said that if Xiaoyang was really the buyer, he should pay for all these goods immediately. After 1 hour, the cashiers finally finished scanning all the items from Xiaoyang's carts. Tao kept a close eye on the girls to make sure they hadn't missed anything. Approaching the head cashier, Tao asked the final amount, to which the girl replied that it was 57,000 yuan. Tao immediately grabbed the terminal and handed it to Xiaoyang, ordering him to pay immediately. With the same force, the guy quickly swiped the card across the terminal. A few moments later, the machine reported that the transaction was successful. Tao was surprised but waved his hand to his subordinates, saying that it was time for them to go. But Xiaoyang stopped him. Tao turned sharply, asking what the guy wanted from him. Xiaoyang ordered him to apologize for his behavior. Otherwise, he would immediately demand a refund. Tao started yelling at the guy not to look for problems and to leave. However, this time the customers sided with Xiaoyang and said that the manager really should apologize to the guy. Xiaoyang said that if Tao apologized immediately, he would be kind and buy 10 times more goods. To confirm his words, the guy said that he would show the balance of his card. Xiaoyang swiped the terminal again to display the balance. Tao was shocked when he saw that the guy had more than 7 million in his account. Xiaoyang said that if the guy apologized for his behavior right now, he would stay. Tao struggled with his pride for a long time, as he was afraid of losing such a large sum. Soon, he gave in and bowed, asking forgiveness for his behavior. Xiaoyang patted him on the head and told him to control himself next time. Tao became more polite and asked why the guy needed such supplies. But Xiaoyang said that it was none of his business. The manager said that the store was short on supplies, so the guy should go directly to the wholesalers. Xiaoyang asked if Tao could recommend anyone to him, and he told him about Zhang Xingzhe, who had just such a business. The manager immediately called Shenzhen and said that they had one big client. As they made their way to the warehouse, Xiaoyang thought about how much of the organization's gray income went directly to Tao. Soon, an expensive car pulled up to the warehouse. The car stopped abruptly next to the guys, and Tao barely managed to take a step back to avoid being hit. Xiaoyang looked at the driver, wondering if he had ever been fined for such dangerous driving. A middle-aged man got out of the car with a cigarette. It was for him that Tao worked for a long time at the school and laundered money from students. Tao approached the boss and told him that he and Xiaoyang were in high school. Shenzhen took a drag and said that he now remembered the guy. The man blew smoke straight into Xiaoyang's face. Xingzhe said that he remembered this stubborn boy. The man said he didn't like people who pretended to be rich. But Xiaoyang replied that he didn't understand what he was talking about. Xingzhe grabbed Tao by the head, saying that he was only wasting his time by believing that a big client was waiting for him. The man said that he had been in this business for many years and could spot a person with money at first glance. Xiaoyang said he couldn't believe that an uneducated person would look down on others. Xingzhe couldn't stand the insult directed at him and grabbed the guy by the chest. Xiaoyang remained calm and repeated that there was no need to look down on others. Xingzhe asked who the guy called uneducated, and the guy asked in response whether it was right to call him a snob then. Tao approached them and asked them not to start a fight and said that Xingzhe was really uneducated and that was why he was so offended. The man kicked Tao and told him to shut up if he couldn't speak properly. Xingzhe told Xiaoyang that if he didn't buy a truckload of goods from him, he would crawl back on all fours. The guy took out his phone and told him to stop tugging at his collar and dictate his account number. After some time, Xingzhe couldn't believe that Xiaoyang had actually transferred money to him and even promised to buy more goods. The guy said he needed rice, oil, salt, snacks, and drinks. Shenzhen was delighted to see such a list of products since he just happened to have a batch that was approaching its expiration date. The man brought Xiaoyang to the warehouse and said that he would give everything back and even give a 10% discount. The guy came closer to the goods and said that they needed to check the quality first. Xiaoyang picked up one of the items and after examining it, said that the packaging was fine but almost everything inside was rotten. The guy looked at Xingzhe and said that he was still scamming. The man didn't think Xiaoyang would understand this so he offered a 50% discount. The guy replied that he would spend 5 million only on the highest quality products. Xiaoyang put the goods aside and said that he would take these goods too. The guy said he would do it only on the condition that he pay in a month. Xingzhe began to worry about Xiaoyang's suspicious behavior but he said that he would leave his house as collateral. The man asked who the guy was going to sell all this to which he replied that he was going to keep it all for himself. Xiaoyang patted the man on the shoulder and said that soon even a late payment would be worth its weight in gold. Shenzhen asked the guy what he meant. Xiaoyang said to ignore it and deliver the goods to the address he would send. At that moment, the guy received a call from one of the potential buyers of the house. Xiaoyang quickly told Xingzhe to resolve the food issue as quickly as possible and went to the meeting. When the guy left, Tao asked the boss if everything was okay but he couldn't answer that question. After some time, Xiaoyang met a new buyer who brought an advance payment of 400,000. The old man said that he agreed to give the guy 3 months to leave and offered to sign a contract. Xiaoyang decided to ask why the buyer was in such a hurry and why he needed this house at all. The old man replied that his granddaughter was changing schools and she would have nowhere to live so he wanted to buy a house in the area. Xiaoyang said that the old man was too honest for revealing all the information and asked if the man was afraid that he might raise the price. The old man immediately became frightened and began to ask not to do this since he had brought all the money that he had managed to save over many years. Xiaoyang said that the man shouldn't worry about it because the deal was still in place. The old man took out the papers and soon they both signed them. The man looked at the documents with joy. The old man bowed and apologized for distracting Xiaoyang from his work. Xiaoyang looked at the man and realized that he was too kind and that his granddaughter would hardly survive the disaster for even a month. Before the old man left, the boy asked him to stay a little longer and give him his current address. The next day, Xiaoyang decided to visit the construction site to see how things were progressing. The foreman reminded him about further payment and the guy replied that he was just about to transfer the money. The foreman gave a tour of the facility and reported that they had already completed 70 to 80% of the work and the warehouse was already ready for use. Xiaoyang immediately called Xingzi and said that he could now bring supplies. Within days, the warehouse was filled with food and employees said it looked like a real bunker. Xiaoyang made sure that workers stored perishable food separately. One difficult working day closer to night, all the work was finished. Xiaoyang was left alone in the warehouse looking at the boxes of products lined up in rows. The guy was glad that he was able to cope with all this. When the system sent a notification about the points being awarded, Xiaoyang immediately checked the system store where he saw the new box. The guy decided to take this box which was designed to awaken his special skill before the apocalypse. Xiaoyang spent 10 points and received the mind's eye which helped detect the target's hostility. The guy said it was the most useful skill in the early stages of a disaster. The next task was for Xiaoyang to arm himself which he was already prepared for. Late at night, Xiaoyang went to the black market to complete this task. The guy was walking down the street and heard a lot of talk about the sale of illegal products and tried to find the right seller. At some point, Xiaoyang heard a familiar voice and became interested. Li Shu stood next to one of the stalls bargaining for an ice jade bracelet. Xiaoyang immediately realized that the man was trying to deceive Jing with fake gifts. The guy heard metal jingling nearby and became interested. Xiaoyang turned towards where the sound was coming from. The guy was delighted to see many different knives on the table. Xiaoyang approached the merchant and looked at the selection, then asked if there was anything hard. The seller said that these were the sharpest knives, but if the guy wasn't satisfied with that, he could try sharpening them himself. Xiaoyang looked at the man and said that this was not the hardest weapon. The salesman frowned and asked if the guy was looking for trouble. At that moment, the man received a message on his phone about the deposit of 200,000 yuan. Xiaoyang transferred the money using the code lying on the counter and said that he seriously wanted to buy something special. The salesman turned to his assistant Xiang and told him to watch the counter. The man pointed Xiaoyang in the right direction and said that they don't talk about things like that on the street. Soon, they entered a room on a quieter street. The seller showed a homemade barrel, which was enough to shoot a chicken, and offered cheap cartridges for it. However, Xiaoyang puzzled him and said that this was not what he needed. The seller offered the guy a replica revolver for 5,000 yuan and cartridges for it. Xiaoyang got angry and reminded him that he had transferred an advance payment of 200,000, so he needed something more substantial. Only now did the seller realize that the transferred money was only a part. Xiaoyang said he plans to spend 2 million yuan on weapons. The seller asked why the guy decided to come to him with such a large order. Xiaoyang said that previously such matters were handled by subordinates, after which the seller asked him to wait a little. The man ran to the door and locked it with the inside lock. Approaching the window, the seller looked out from behind the curtain to check if they were being followed. After pulling the curtain closed, the man said that Xiaoyang had come to the right place. The seller told him to write a list of the things he needed, and he would give him an address where he would need to come the day after tomorrow at midnight with cash. After some time, they finished their preparations and went outside. At this moment, Li Shu passed by and immediately turned his attention to Xiaoyang. The man said that he now understood where the guy got the money from and asked how long he was going to ignore Jing. Li Shu asked if Xiaoyang was going to be like those people who sell everything they have to live a little more comfortably. The guy thought this was the best opportunity to test his new skill. Xiaoyang activated the mind's eye and began to look closely at the people around him. The guy looked first at the gun seller and saw that he had no hidden intentions. Looking at Li Shu, Xiaoyang noticed that he was extremely dissatisfied. The guy smiled and said that the trash the man bought for Jing was perfect for her. After these words, Li Shu became even more angry, which immediately showed the eye of the mind. The weapon seller Xiaoyang had asked who the man was. Hearing that Li Shu was the guy's enemy, the salesman promised that they would deal with him, and Xiaoyang asked him not to kill him. When the guy left, the seller's men started to attack Li Shu. Realizing that they were going to beat him, the man tried to negotiate with them, but it was all in vain. After some time, the beaten Li Shu was thrown out of the black neighborhood. The man lay on the ground and thought about how he could take revenge on Xiaoyang. 2 days later, Xiaoyang arrived at his warehouse with a large truck. Before unloading it, the guy checked the purchased goods once again. While Xiaoyong was checking his weapon, the system sent a notification about the completed task. The system awarded bonuses and issued a reward in the form of bonus potions. The guy examined the reward and determined that such potions were equal to 2 potions from the store. Xiaoyong decided not to delay and try it out right away. The guy stuck the needle into his arm and injected the potion. Xiaoyong's strength immediately increased by 2 units from a starting value of 5 units. Having opened the system store, the guy saw that nothing new had been added to it. Xiaoyong decided that it would be best to use the advantage of the potions to the limit. After some time, the guy already had 8 points of physical strength. So he wanted to test it. Xiaoyong looked around and saw metal rods against the wall. The guy came up and took a thick steel rod. Xiaoyong threw him up and kicked him. The rod bent and flew to the side. When the force of the blow caused the wall to crack, Xiaoyong realized that now he didn't even have to fear the apocalypse. Approaching the truck with the weapons, the guy decided that it was safest to store them in the ring. Xiaoyong brought his hand with the ring to the truck, and the boxes gradually began to disappear. Looking around, the guy thought that a disaster would happen the day after tomorrow. So he had to finish all the remaining work. Xiaoyong immediately thought of the old man who bought a house for his granddaughter. The guy was still haunted by the fact that this man was not bad and did not deserve such a fate. Xiaoyong said that even after the apocalypse and rebirth, he cannot ignore people in trouble. The guy decided to send them the bare minimum as compensation for the costs of his plan. And it was up to them to survive. After some time, Xiaoyong arrived in a poor area of the city. At the address the old man gave him, getting out of the car, the guy said that this place couldn't be found without a navigator. Xiaoyong thought that the old man was really not rich, since he lived in such a cheap place. And on the top floor at that, having approached the right door, the guy knocked. Xiaoyong decided to get supplies at the last moment so that he wouldn't have to explain himself later. The guy put on the ring and pointed his hand towards the corridor. Within a few seconds, the entire passage was filled with boxes of supplies. By this time, the old man had come to the door to let the uninvited guest in. The man thought that the owner of the apartment had come and promised that he would pay the rent next week. Seeing Xiaoyong in front of him, the old man was very surprised. The man looked around and saw a lot of boxes, after which he asked why the guy had come to him. Xiaoyong said that he would explain everything later. But now they needed to bring all the boxes into the apartment before the neighbors saw them. After a while, they finished. And the old man said that the youth of today is strong, because the guy was not even out of breath. Xiaoyong inspected the apartment and said that it was not bad, and the door was quite strong. The boy advised the old man to use his supplies wisely, and then he would be able to last for 6 months from tomorrow. However, Xiaoyong quickly fell silent when he saw the photo on the shelf. The boy came closer and saw in the photograph an old man and a girl with short brown hair and golden eyes. Xiaoyong immediately recognized the girl as his friend Shan Shan, whom they met after the apocalypse. The guy took the photo and asked if Shan Shan was the old man's granddaughter, which greatly surprised him. The man said that the girl was currently at her native school, but was planning to transfer and move into the house that he bought for her. Xiaoyong remembered how he met Shan Shan after the disaster. The girl said that in her past life, the old man went to the destroyed school to save her and died himself. Xiaoyong put the photo back in place and promised himself that he would make up for Shan Shan's regrets in this life. The guy approached the old man and said that the move was cancelled, but the man said that this couldn't be done, since the advance payment had already been made. Xiaoyong tried to explain that there would be a disaster tomorrow, so he wanted to take him and Shan Shan away and prepare a place for them. However, the old man did not understand what the guy was talking about. Xiaoyong tried to think of a way to explain it to the old man so that he would understand. The boy put the ring on and said that desperate times would soon come when people would think only of hunger. Xiaoyong pointed the ring at the boxes and they immediately began to disappear. The old man began to back away and asked where everything had disappeared to and what kind of magic the guy was using. Xiaoyong said that he could see the future, so the man should listen to him if he wanted to save himself and his granddaughter. The boy put away the ring and asked where Shan Shan's school was. After some time, they were already sitting in Xiaoyong's car and driving after the girl. Throughout the entire trip, the old man cast worried glances at the boy, as if he still didn't trust him. Towards evening, the car drove up to the school. Xiaoyong jumped out of the car and asked the old man if he knew the Shan Shan class and dormitory, to which he received a positive answer. Meanwhile, Shan Shan herself found herself in an unpleasant situation. One of her classmates slapped her in the face and asked what Xiao Shan saw in her. Shan Shan took a step back and said that she was not going to date the guy. It was he who insisted on it. A classmate kicked the girl in the stomach and said that she didn't ask her to justify herself. The girl grabbed Shan Shan by the hair and said that she would not believe that Xiao Shan was the one who molested the girl. At that moment, Xiao Yong and his grandfather came running. Seeing the old man, the classmate let Shan Shan go, and she asked what the grandfather was doing there. Seeing how his granddaughter was being bullied, the grandfather ordered that she be left alone. 3 school children stood between the old man and Shan Shan, and one of them said that the girls would sort it out themselves. However, the old man pounced on them, asking where their parents were even looking if they allowed their classmates to be bullied. One of the boys decided to hit the grandfather on the back with a bat to get him to let go of his friend. Xiao Yong arrived in time and grabbed the student's hand. The boy asked if the student really wanted to become a killer at such a young age. The students thought that Xiao Yong was Shan Shan's brother, and asked her why she didn't tell them about it. Meanwhile, Xiao Yong snatched the bat from the guy's hands and kicked him in the stomach. The guy flew to the side and fell on his back. The other students were wary, as they didn't expect Xiao Yong to be involved in any kind of wrestling. Xiao Yong turned his gaze to the remaining 2 guys. They began to surround him from both sides. One had a bat in his hands, and the other, a knife. Finding himself behind Xiao Yong, the guy with the bat decided to attack first. Before the bat reached its target, the boy managed to crouch and dodge the blow. Xiao Yong noted that along with the strength, the reaction speed also increased. The boy turned and grabbed the schoolboy by the collar of his jacket. Xiao Yong yanked him sharply by the collar, causing the boy to fall on his back. The force of the blow caused the schoolboy to immediately lose consciousness. Meanwhile, the second guy was about to attack from behind with a knife. Xiao Yong quickly turned around and intercepted the attacker's hand. Before the schoolboy could react, the boy raised his leg to strike. Snatching the knife from the attacker's hands, Xiao Yong struck him under the knee, knocking him down. The schoolboy hit his head on the asphalt and lost consciousness. Xiao Yong turned his gaze to the schoolgirls who surrounded Shan Shan. The girls jumped as the boy walked towards them, and one of them asked what he was going to do. Xiao Yong walked up and slapped the girl. For a few moments she stood frozen in place, afraid to move. Meanwhile, Xiao Yong grabbed the hair of her friend who had recently grabbed Shan Shan's hair and asked her if she liked it. The guy pulled out a knife and held it to the girl's throat, causing her to panic. Xiao Yong suddenly stabbed with a knife, accompanied by the screams of the schoolgirls. The guy had no intention of forgiving those who bullied his friend. The girl's friend fell to the ground. Looking at Xiao Yong in fear, the schoolgirl fell to her knees. She brought her hands to her hair and realized that Xiao Yong had cut it. The girl started screaming that she wouldn't leave it that easily. Xiao Yong threw the cut hair on her head and said that it would only get in her way. Everyone looked at the guy and didn't understand what was going on. Before leaving, Xiao Yong said that in a couple of days she would realize that cutting her hair short could save her life. The boy headed towards the exit from the school grounds and told Shan Shan to follow him. After some time, Xiao Yong, Shan Shan, and Grandpa were driving in a car towards the exit of the city. The old man tried to explain to his granddaughter that a great famine would soon happen, so they had to think about survival. However, Shan Shan was only angry, believing that her grandfather had once again believed the scammer's calls. Xiao Yong watched his grandfather and granddaughter through the rearview mirror and was glad that Shan Shan would be safe this time. The guy told the girl that this time they were not deceived, and the information about the famine came from him. Shan Shan looked at Xiao Yong doubtfully and asked who he was. The guy introduced himself and said that there was no need to worry about what happened at school, since it didn't matter now. Shan Shan asked if there really would be a great famine soon. Xiao Yong replied that he made up this story to make it easier to convince the old man. The girl said that she had guessed about this because now are peaceful times. However, Xiao Yong told her directly that they were facing an apocalypse. The guy said that the girl could watch videos and news on her phone to make sure his words were true. Shan Shan immediately took out her phone and immediately came across breaking news. Videos of people biting everyone they came across were circulating on the internet. Many people said that these were signs of rabies infection among people. People instantly became infected by the attackers and also began to behave strangely. Xiao Yong listened to the girl's phone and said that the first warning signs had already appeared on the internet. The guy said that tomorrow a thick toxic fog will envelop several provinces and the effect will manifest itself on living beings. A significant portion of the population will mutate into zombies and begin to attack the survivors. Anyone who breathes will be in danger. After dying at the hands of zombies, everyone will become one of them. Xiao Yong said that the girl should already understand what zombies are. But Shan Shan replied that it was hard to believe. The guy said that even a week wouldn't be enough for the girl to believe that what was happening was real. At this moment, Xiaoyong cursed when he saw a large traffic jam ahead. The emergency lane was also blocked by cars, so it was impossible to pass. Grandpa started to worry that zombies might catch them in traffic. But Xiaoyong replied that it wasn't that urgent. The guy remembered that they would have a few days until the situation was under control. But he was afraid that zombies would appear somewhere nearby. At that moment, a car was speeding along the emergency lane. Seeing a traffic jam ahead, the driver swerved into the normal lane, trying to squeeze between the cars. The driver misjudged the distance and almost crashed into Xiaoyong's car. The guy was very angry because people stopped paying attention to safety rules. Xiaoyong abruptly turned the steering wheel to avoid the car that cut him off. The guy stepped on the gas, driving up sharply right next to the car parked in front of him. The driver in the emergency lane had to return to his lane to avoid colliding with Xiaoyong. However, Xiaoyong realized that the driver was still trying to squeeze into the lane in front of him. The driver drove up to a dangerous distance, trying to push the guy aside. The driver rolled down the window and started shouting something. Grandfather Shan said that this rich man was not worth dealing with, to which Xiaoyong replied that he could deal with him. After a whole hour, the traffic jam finally came to an end, and they were able to drive out onto a clearer stretch of road. Shan looked out the window and warned Xiaoyong that the car from the traffic jam had caught up with them and was trying to cut them off again. The guy looked in the mirror and saw a car, which this time came from the left side. Xiaoyong got angry and said that he was asking for trouble himself. The driver suddenly pulled out in front of Xiaoyong's car and began to brake. The grandfather held his granddaughter and said that she shouldn't behave like him. Xiaoyong said that in the past, he would have let him go. But tomorrow, the apocalypse will begin, so he will no longer forgive such people. The guy suddenly stepped on the gas and rammed the side of the car. The impact caused the car to spin around and crash into the side of the road. The driver got out of the car, holding his head, and started calling the police. The man in the suit looked at the driving away car and tried to remember the license plate. The driver said that he would still show that he was not to be trifled with. By nightfall, Xiaoyong's car arrived at the warehouse site. Shan and her grandfather got out of the car and couldn't believe that this was all real. The girl said that this was too much. Xiaoyong told them to rest, as hard days would begin tomorrow. In the morning, the guy got up earlier than everyone else and drank coffee next to the window overlooking the city, which was far away. Shan woke up and went out to Xiaoyong, saying that she had never slept so well. The guy said that if she woke up, it was time to inspect the area. Taking his grandfather along, Xiaoyong gave him a tour and explained that the walls were made of durable concrete. The gates were made of pure steel and were controlled remotely, so neither humans nor zombies could break through them without powerful weapons. Xiaoyong said that without his permission, only the three of them could be here. Shan asked if they would really leave the people who reached them to die outside the walls. Xiaoyong did not answer this question and suggested moving on. The guy said that during the apocalypse, it is difficult to predict human behavior. If they trust people with ulterior motives, they themselves may die at their hands. Xiaoyong took the grandfather and granddaughter out onto the observation bridge and showed them what was in the adjacent area. The separate fenced-off area contained everything necessary for life, and this is where those who arrived were supposed to stay until the inspection. Xiaoyong said once again that no one could be allowed into the fortress without his permission, after which he suggested going to the warehouse. The guy said he would explain how to distribute the products. Before informing Shan and her grandfather about the situation, Xiaoyong decided to conduct a check. The boy used the mind's eye and looked at the old man and the girl. Xiaoyong saw the green icons above them and assumed they meant complete trust. The guy pulled out a weapon from the ring's storage and said that it was the most important thing during the apocalypse. The old man got a gun, and Shan took a crossbow with a sight. Xiaoyong said that they should always control themselves and not dance to someone else's tune. The system sent a notification about a new task, which consisted of rescuing Zhang Shi's old partner. Xiaoyong was just thinking about how he could find his old friend. He looked towards the city and saw an arrow that pointed to Zhang Shi's location, but only he saw it. Shan asked where the guy was heading. Before leaving, Xiaoyong said once again that Shan and Grandpa should not break the rules. The guy got into the car and said that he was going to pick up some people because they needed to assemble a team. Meanwhile, there was still no turmoil in the city, and people lived as before, trying to ignore the commotion on the internet. At this time, Zhang Shi was at karaoke with his friends. The guy left the room with his friend to go to the toilet. They were loudly joking with each other and were tipsy. They were staggering from the alcohol they had drunk, so they held on to each other. As he walked out into the corridor, Zhang Shi accidentally bumped into a girl passing by with his shoulder. The guy immediately turned to apologize, but the girl and her companion looked angry. The man kicked Zhang Shi in the stomach and told him to watch where he was going. The guy flew back against the wall and rolled onto the floor. Friend Lin ran up to Zhang Shi and asked if he was okay. The guy turned to the attacker and asked why he had to hit him right away. However, this angered the man even more, and now it was time for Lina to receive. The man grabbed the guy by the collar of his shirt and lifted him up. At that moment, a waiter passed by. The guy looked at what was happening and didn't understand why he couldn't spend at least a day in this establishment without fights. The waiter ran up to the fighters and asked all participants to calm down. The man's anger turned on him, and he asked if the waiter knew who he was dealing with. The waiter waved his hand at Zhang Shi and Lin to leave immediately. The man did not pay attention to this and ordered the worker to immediately call the owner. Zhang Shi and Lin took the opportunity to escape to their room. Their friends were waiting for them in room 3090. The out-of-breath guys rushed into the room, quickly closing the door behind them. Friends asked who they were running from. Lin said that they encountered some thug who was going to beat them up. But the waiter stood up for them. A guy named Ching jumped up and said that their class never gave up, so they would quickly deal with the bandits together. Their friend Jiang winced, and it was clear that he was not happy with the idea of a fight. Zhang Shi said that they needed to calm down because there was less than a year left until graduation, and they didn't need any trouble. However, after some time, their peace was disturbed. The bandit from the corridor kicked down the door and entered with his friends and the beaten waiter. The students flinched and looked in their direction. The bandit pushed the waiter aside and told his friends that these were the guys they were looking for. The students jumped up from their seats, but the bandits were already following them. After a while, all four students were kneeling with their hands behind their heads. The waiter was kneeling next to them, shaking in pain and holding his stomach. Chung started shouting that one call and they would all be in trouble. The bandit grabbed a bottle from the table and asked who gave him permission to speak. The man hit Cheng on the head with a bottle as hard as he could, breaking it. Blood and alcohol ran down the boy's hair, and he quickly fell silent. Meanwhile, Xiao Yang's car drove up to the karaoke building. The guy got out of the car and only now remembered that Zhang Shi went to college. As he walked into the building, Xiao Yang said that the end of the world was at hand, but his heart longed for a song. Meanwhile, Zhang Shi tried to shout to Chang, who did not respond to his words. The girl accompanying the bandit watched this without much interest. The man approached her and asked if she was happy, to which the girl replied that it was not this guy who pushed her. The bandit pointed at Zhang Shi, saying that he did it. Chang came to his senses and grabbed an ashtray from the table. The guy was about to hit the bandit on the head, but his henchman grabbed him. The bandit got angry and said that the guy was too brave. While his subordinates held Cheng down, the man smashed another bottle on his head. The guy fell to the floor and this time lost consciousness. Zhang Shi and Lin jumped up from the floor and rushed at the bandits. The bandits did not expect that the students would dare to go against them. Only Zhang cowered in the corner and covered his head with his hands, not daring to intervene in the brawl. While the drag was going on, the waiter felt really bad and the veins on his body started to appear. Zhang Shi fought with all his might, wanting to avenge his friend. The waiter gradually lost touch with reality and became a zombie. As soon as the conversion was fully completed, the zombie rushed at the fighting people. Running up to one of the bandits from behind, the dead man sank his teeth into his shoulder. The fight was immediately stopped due to the waiter's strange behavior. Zhang was shocked as he watched what was happening. The bandits tried to pull the waiter away from his colleague, but he was too strong. As soon as they got the zombie off one man, it immediately grabbed hold of another bandit. The dead man pushed his victim to the floor, biting into his forearm. Someone grabbed the zombie by the neck from behind and tore it away from the man. Xiaoyun easily lifted the dead man off the floor. The bandits watched what was happening and tried to understand what was happening. Xiaoyun walked to the wall and slammed the zombie's head into the TV. The guy looked around at those presents and ordered that all of this be stopped immediately. The man with the bitten forearm watched Xiaoyun in shock. He himself had dealt with a mad waiter and did not understand how the guy had the strength to cope with him. The bandit boss asked who Xiaoyun was and what he was doing there anyway. The boy ignored his question and turned to Jiangxi, asking if he had been bitten. The boy looked at Xiaoyun and replied that he had not been bitten. Xiaoyun didn't explain anything and simply told Jiangxi to follow him. The bandit boss grabbed Jiangxi by the shoulder and said that they were not finished yet. At that moment, one of the man's subordinates, who was the first to be bitten, began to feel unwell. Xiaoyun immediately turned his attention to him. The bite was clearly visible and dark bulging veins were already beginning to spread across the man's body. Without letting go of the zombie, Xiaoyun said that he had been bitten. The man looked at him and confirmed his suspicions, but did not understand what this meant. Xiaoyun thought that the bandit was already infected, and the bite so close to the head accelerated the mutation. The guy didn't explain anything and headed towards the exit, dragging the zombie behind him. Xiaoyun threw the dead man into the toilet. Before the zombie could get to his feet, the guy slammed the door. Xiaoyun took a few steps back and watched the door for a while. Knocking and growling sounds came from behind it, but the dead man still had no idea how it opened. Xiaoyun turned to the rest of the people and thought that this was very good. The guy flexed his fists and asked Jiangxi who he should eliminate. The guy didn't understand what they were talking about, because he didn't know Xiaoyun. The gangster boss said the guy was being too brazen and attacked him with his fists. However, Xiaoyun quickly stopped him, grabbing his face with his hand. The guy slammed the bandit into the floor with such force that the tiles underneath him cracked. The man's subordinate, bitten on the shoulder, immediately rushed at Xiaoyun. However, the guy moved too quickly, and the bandit did not have time to react. Xiaoyun knocked him out with one blow. The bandit fell to the floor, foam coming out of his mouth and his body starting to twitch. Another bandit ran up to him and asked how he could pass out from one blow. Xiaoyun said that those who want to try his fist can come over. The boy told Jiangxi to take his friends and wait for him outside. After a while, Jiangxi and Lin led Cheng out of the room, with Jiang walking ahead of them. The bandit boss said that they were leaving too. However, Xiaoyun stood at the door, preventing him from leaving the room. The guy said that the man almost killed his friend, so he won't let it go that easily. The bandit wanted to attack Xiaoyun, but he struck first. The man flew back into the room and fell to the floor. Xiaoyun slammed the door from the outside and locked it. The bandit started knocking on the door and threatening to kill the guy if he didn't open it immediately. At this point, the concentration of the virus in the blood of one of his subordinates reached a critical level. The man turned into a zombie and completely lost consciousness. The zombie broke free from the hands holding it in place and rushed at the boss. The bandits didn't know what to do with him. Xiaoyun stood next to the door and listened to what was happening behind it. The waiter approached the guy and asked what happened. And then, Xiaoyun advised him to lock the door and call the police and an ambulance. The guy said it was another bout of rabies flu. The waiter was stunned, and then Xiaoyun had to shout at him. The man immediately took out the key and locked the door with shaking hands. Xiaoyun waved his hand at Jiangxi and told him to follow him. More and more workers gathered near the door to the room and tried to understand what was going on there. They discussed Xiaoyun's words about there being people infected with rabies there. The workers decided to check what was happening using surveillance cameras. After a while, everyone gathered in the security room to watch the recordings. They couldn't contain the horror that gripped them after watching it. The people in the room went wild and ate each other. Only after this did the workers rush to call the police. Meanwhile, Xiaoyun walked to his car and told the students not to be afraid and get in. When everyone had taken their places, the guy took all 4 friends to his fortress. Jiangxi sat next to Xiaoyun in the front seat and thanked him for his help. Then asked if they knew each other. Xiaoyun decided to say that he was hired to protect Jiangxi. But he had to keep the client's name a secret. Jiang asked what rabies flu the guy was talking about. Since it was all just a common internet myth, Xiaoyun said that they themselves saw everything in that room. And then Lin asked if there was a cure for it. Xiaoyun replied that the epidemic would only get worse and the current world would be doomed. At this point, clashes with infected people began to occur on the street. The students hurried to look out the windows to make sure once again that this was not a joke. They saw how the infected attacked healthy people. Xiaoyun said that this was a local outbreak. But things would soon get out of control. So they had to listen to him to survive. All 4 students agreed to obey his orders. The system sent a notification that the former partner's task has been completed. Xiaoyun entered the system store and saw that the only useful item left was the apocalypse cultivator. The guy was thinking about whether it was worth buying it or whether it would be better to update the store. Xiaoyun thought everything was useful and inexpensive. But he didn't want to deal with it at the moment. At the moment, he was worried about the people sitting in his car. Xiaoyun could trust Jiangxi, but his 3 friends could not be trusted. In his past life, Jiangxi said that his entire dorm was wiped out by zombies due to the betrayal of a close friend. Now, Xiaoyun was interested in which of the boy's 3 close friends was the traitor. Meanwhile, Jing was at home and contacting Li Shu. The girl asked when he would bring her supplies because she was afraid to go to the store. The man promised to bring supplies when he was free. But his words were interrupted by a loud knock on the door. Jing was startled and walked cautiously to the door, telling Lish that she would call him back later. Shaking with fear, the girl approached the door and looked through the peephole. Lu Xian calmed down and opened the door when she saw her friend Shuya behind it. The girl entered the apartment and said that the police had taken Uncle Shu from the first floor. Jing said that now it was clear where all the noise was coming from. Shuya said that rabies flu was not an ordinary horror story and asked if Lish had brought food. Having received a negative answer, the girl said that she needed to call Li Shu and tell him that Xiaoyun had a lot of supplies. Shuya said that everything was kept in the guy's new house. But he didn't let her go there. Jing realized that Xiaoyun had heard from somewhere that an epidemic would occur. Shuya said to call Li Shu immediately so that they could either take the supplies from Xiaoyun or take most of the money from him. Meanwhile, Xiaoyun's car arrived at the fortress. The students began to get out of the car and look around. Zhang Shi looked at the walls with delight and said that it looked like a real fortress. Xiaoyun smiled and said that everyone reacted like this for the first time. Shan Shan and her grandfather Shang went out to meet the guy and asked if everything was okay. Xiaoyun said that everything was fine and promised to introduce new team members. The guy introduced a smiling Zhang Shi and his classmates, saying that they would stay with him. The guy greeted them and said that since Xiaoyun had personally chosen them, they would be welcome here. Xiaoyun asked Grandpa Shang to take a couple of guys and show them around here and explain their rules. Lin looked around and said it looked a lot like northern Myanmar. At this moment, Jiang raised his hand and was about to say something. The guy said that if they were given weapons, they could help protect this place. Xiaoyun looked at Jiang from over his shoulder with a cold gaze. Lin became worried and told his friend that they needed to gain trust first and only then ask for such a thing. Xiaoyun said that they had nothing to worry about as he would give them weapons in a few days. The guy looked at Shang and said that he had quite serious injuries, so it would be better to examine him in the infirmary. Xiaoyun took Shang and sent the rest of the boys to the common rooms to wash and change clothes. Jiang asked Lin why he stopped him since there was a possibility that they would be given weapons right away. The guy said that this is the best way to protect themselves because they are essentially under house arrest. Lin didn't understand his friend's attitude and reminded him that Xiaoyun had saved them. Jiang sure reminded them that the guy had been hired to protect them, but Jiang asked who could have hired him in the first place. The guy reminded that Chen had already been taken away and the infirmary looked more like a prison than a hospital. Jiang suspected that their friend might have been harvested for his organs and that they would be next. The guy thought they needed to strike first. Lin said that they could not do this because they might harm the person who wished them well. However, Jiang insisted that they needed to kill Xiaoyun and take control of the fortress. Jiang Shi and Lin were shocked to hear that their friend was already having dirty thoughts about Shan Shan. Seeing his friend's reactions, Jiang decided to laugh it off, saying he was just trying to defuse the situation. Jiang Shi and Lin exhaled, thinking that their friend had just made a bad joke. After some time, they all washed and changed their clothes. However, Jiang wasn't joking. He simply decided that there was no point in negotiating with the guys and that it was worth taking matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, Shan Shan and Grandpa Shang finished their business and came to Xiaoyun to report. The old man said that the guys had settled in and the wounded man had been placed in the hospital and all the windows and doors had been closed. Xiaoyun thanked them for their work and said that they could rest until tomorrow, as the next day might be difficult. Before they left, the guy told them to keep an eye on not only Shang but the other guys as well. Xiaoyun said that there might be a traitor among them, so they should be careful. Once everyone had gone to their rooms, Xiaoyun went down to the warehouse. The guy opened a system store and was going to deal with this matter in peace and quiet. Xiaoyun had enough points to buy all the items in the store. After purchasing the items, the guy still had 8 points left in his account. From the boxes, Xiaoyun received large supplies of food and another 1,500 rounds of ammunition. Looking at the pile of loot, the guy thought that money was good. But after the apocalypse, these rewards would be priceless. The next day, as Xiaoyun expected, many difficulties awaited them. By midday, jeeps arrived at the fortress gates, led by the expensive car that Xiaoyun had collided with a few days earlier. The cars stopped near the gate and checked the address again. Armed bandits got out of the cars. The man Xiaoyun had bumped into on the road got out of the car and promised his friend that they would have lunch together later. After hanging up the phone, he ordered his men to get inside the fortress. The bandits, armed with bats, tried to break through the metal gates, but to no avail. One of the bandits told the man that the gate was only a few centimeters thick, so there was no way they could break through it. The rich man didn't understand that he would install such doors in an ordinary house. The man ordered the boxes to be pulled out of the cars immediately. The boxes contained bottles of Molotov cocktails. The bandits began setting fire to and throwing bottles over the fence. Bottles fell on the site and exploded. Soon, the area behind the gate was engulfed in flames. The man watched with pleasure as the fire spread beyond the gate. There were not many materials on the site that could burn, but it was necessary to stop the fire. Shan, Jiangxi, Lin, and Jiang ran out into the street with buckets of water and fire extinguishers. The girls said that Xiao Yang was right, that emergency situations would begin to occur even before the disaster. Meanwhile, Xiao Yang himself came out with a rifle, and Grandpa Shang took his gun. The two of them headed to the observation tower to see who was looking for trouble. After some time, they climbed up the observation tower next to the gate. The old man said that the car looked very familiar. It took grandfather a few moments to remember the rich man with whom they had an incident on the way to the fortress. Soon, in the crowd of people, the old man spotted the man himself. The bandits watched the fire and soon noticed people on the observation tower. The subordinate immediately reported this to his boss. The man called Xiao Yang and promised to burn his house to the ground if he did not come out immediately. The guy replied that they had 5 minutes to get ready and leave. This enraged the bandits, and they went to get more Molotov cocktails to set fire to even more territory. At this moment, Xiao Yang received a new task from the system, which was to eliminate the threat. Grandpa Shang asked what they would do next and whether they should fire a warning shot. Xiao Yang reminded him that these were bandits who didn't care whether someone was burned alive by their actions or not. The guy took aim and said that they would hurt innocent people if they left them alive. Xiao Yang started shooting without warning. The first bullet tore off the bandit boss's left arm. The man immediately howled in pain, and his subordinates began to run away. Xiao Yang sighed in disappointment and said that his skills had deteriorated due to the peaceful life. The bandit boss immediately ran towards the car, promising that he would return and then Xiao Yang would pay for his actions. The guy said that they would finish everything here and now, since he doesn't like to wait. A second later, a hail of bullets rained down on the bandits. One after another, the bandits fell to the ground dead. The boss jumped into the trunk of one of the jeeps and pushed his subordinates aside. He grabbed the driver's seat and ordered the man sitting in it to get out of there quickly. Grandpa Shang said they were trying to escape by car, but Xiao Yang said that was exactly why he brought the machine gun with him. The guy started shooting at the car, and bullets pierced the windows and roof. Grandfather Xiao Yang moved while remaining completely calm. The old man couldn't cope so easily even at work, so he was afraid to even guess who this guy really was. Xiao Yang continued firing until all the bandits were killed. Less than an hour later, there was complete silence. Due to a broken closer, the trunk of one of the jeeps opened. Xiao Yang stood on the tower for a while longer, then told the old man to call Jiangxi and the others to clean up. However, the guy then changed his mind and said not to rush and to leave the bodies on the road. At the early stage of the disaster, Xiao Yang wanted to turn these bandits into zombies so that Jiangxi and Shan could practice. After a while, the silence was again broken by the sounds of approaching cars. This time, Li Shu was heading towards the fortress. Shuya was the only one who had ever been to Xiao Yang's new territory, so she sat in the back seat and gave directions. Jing sat next to her, looking boredly at the passing scenery outside the window. The girl always paid attention to how Shuya began to behave in Li Shu's company, trying to draw the man's attention to herself. The man stopped near the gate and told the girls to go ahead and call when they got inside. At first, only Jing was supposed to go, but after getting out of the car, she called Shuya to come with her. Jing said she didn't know the way, but the girl tried to get out of it by citing uncomfortable shoes. However, Jing still managed to pull her out of the car, not daring to leave her alone with Li Shu. The man remained in the car, watching as the girls headed towards the fortress. Li Shu called his subordinates and told them to get ready. A large black car followed behind them. There was a crowd of bandits sitting inside, ready to rush into battle at any moment on the boss's orders. They were ordered to act as soon as Li Shu's car moved. Meanwhile, the girls were heading towards the gate, and Shuya asked why Jing had dragged her into all this. Jing said that she would not fall for the girl's petty tricks, but the girl replied that she had dressed up for Xiao Yang, who was now free. Soon the girls noticed that something had happened in front of the gate. The cars were all covered in bullet holes, and corpses were lying on the asphalt. Shuya assumed there had been a shootout, but she didn't understand why it had happened. Shuya clung to her friend and suggested going back, but Jing said that some time had passed since the shootout. The girl thought that Xiaoyang should have died by now, so the only thing they had to worry about was whether there were any food left in the warehouse. Shuya insisted that they should return to Lish, but Jing decided to check if the doors were locked first. Meanwhile, one of the corpses in the jeep that was left behind began to come back to life. The girls approached the gate and said that they couldn't see what was going on inside. Shuya said that since everything was closed, it meant Xiaoyang was okay. At that moment, the girls were attracted by a shout from above. Shan stood on the observation tower and asked who they were and how they found this place. Shuya said that they were Xiaoyang's friends, and Jing said that she was Xiaoyang's girlfriend. Shan turned to face the courtyard and told Xiaoyang that his girlfriend had arrived. Jing thought that the guy had found himself a new girlfriend, but Shuya said that they needed to get ready as they had a task. Jing said that Li Shu had several pistols so they could deal with Xiaoyang, and all they needed to do was open the gate. After some time, the guy himself climbed up to the observation tower and asked what the girls were doing there. Xiaoyang immediately used the mind's eye to see through the girls' hidden intentions. Shuya flirted with him and asked him to let them in, but red symbols were burning above their heads, expressing their ill intentions. Xiaoyang asked how far Li Shu stopped and how many armed men he took with him. The girls froze in place, not understanding how the guy figured this out. Just a few moments later, several bullets hit the ground near the girls' feet. Seeing that it was Xiaoyang who opened fire, Jing was told that he had gone crazy. Shuya tried to calm the girl down and asked her not to provoke the guy, but she believed that Xiaoyang would not be able to shoot her anyway. The guy just laughed and said he didn't shoot to shoot them. At that moment, the girls heard strange sounds coming from behind them. Turning around, Jing and Shuya couldn't believe what they saw. Recently, dead people began to rise, and it was clear that they were infected with rabies. Xiaoyang watched from the tower and said that the girls would die at their hands. A second later, the zombies rushed at the girls with a loud growl. Jing and Shuya barely managed to jump aside, escaping their clutching hands. Li Shu was sitting in the car when the girls' screams were heard. They ran to the car and begged to be saved, and a crowd of zombies ran after them. Li Shu looked out the window and asked where the infected came from. The man ordered his men to retreat immediately via radio. Jing and Shuya were about to get into Lish's car, but he didn't wait for them. The man quickly turned the car around and began to drive away, leaving the girls behind. Jing ran behind Shui, but she didn't want to die in this place and under these circumstances. The girl took her bag off her shoulder and threw it at her friend's feet. The straps of the bag caught on Shuya's ankle, and she began to fall. The girl didn't have time to group herself and fell to the ground. Shuya turned her head and saw that the infected were already nearby. A moment later, the street was filled with the girl's screams. The zombies were tearing her apart, and she watched as Jing, who had set her up, ran away. While the zombies were distracted by eating Shui, Jing ran forward without a drop of pity, repeating that the girl deserved it. The system sent Xiaoyang a message that the task of eliminating the threat had been completed, and now the area needed to be cleared. Shinshin looked at the guy and asked if all the dead really turn into zombies. Xiaoyang explained that the dead would quickly turn into zombies, while some would only need severe injury or exhaustion. The guy headed towards the stairs and told the girl to call everyone to the meeting. After some time, all the inhabitants of the fortress gathered in one room. They sat down at the table, with Xiaoyang sitting at the head. The guy said that for the next couple of days they would stay inside and the windows would be closed to adapt to the new infection. Zhang Shi was worried about the condition of his friend Chang, who was currently still in the infirmary. The doors were locked and the windows were boarded up. The guy was lying on the bed and still hadn't regained consciousness. Dark, bulging veins had already begun to spread across his body, indicating that he was already infected. Meanwhile, in the city, things were already starting to get out of control of the authorities. People tried to save themselves in every possible way, but due to the numerous influx of zombies, chaos reigned in the city. Shengzi watched what was happening from the window of his apartment. The man told his wife, Asu, and son, Xiao, that he would go to the warehouse for supplies that night, and they should not open the door to anyone during that time. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. Shengzi looked at the front door with apprehension and remained silent for a while. The man told his wife to be quiet, and when she covered her son's mouth with her hand, he walked towards the door. Shengzi took the club, but when he approached the door, he heard a familiar voice. The man exhaled when he recognized the newcomer as his subordinate, Tao. Deciding that the guy was not a threat, Shengzi opened the front door. Before he could let the guests into the apartment, he was kicked in the stomach.
Tao's subordinates ran into the apartment and pinned the man down on the floor. Tao walked up to them and looked down on his former boss. Xingzi demanded that he be released immediately.
The man asked why Tao was doing this, since he had always treated him well. However, the guy did not agree with him and believed that he had been treated like a lackey all this time. Tao felt that he had been given too little for all his time of faithful service, so now he wanted to get the address and keys to the warehouse.
Xingzi gritted his teeth, not intending to answer the guy's questions.
Tao said that the man was unlikely to resist for long and went towards Xingzi's wife and son. The guy grabbed Asa by the hair and dragged her towards her husband. Xiao screamed and rushed at Tao, demanding that he let his mother go. The child was hysterical and bit the guy on the hand with all his might. Tao jerked his hand sharply and threw the boy aside, hitting him in the face. Xingzi said that they could do whatever they wanted with him, but they had to leave his wife and child alone. Tao looked at the man and said that they would be safe as long as they cooperated.
After some time, Xingzi led Tao and his men to the supply depot.
However, when he opened the warehouse gates, only a few boxes were waiting for them. Tao looked at it and asked where everything else was. Xingzi recalled that the guy himself brought them a major client who bought everything and there were almost no expired items left. Tao thought about it, recalling his recent meeting with Xiao Yong. The guy said they would have enough supplies to last a lifetime if they could get to the warehouse at Xiao Yong's factory. Xingzi said that there was no point in approaching the guy, since he had seen the weapon when he was delivering supplies. Tao replied that these were already Shenzhen's own problems. The man didn't understand what he was talking about, and then the guy said that he would trade the safety of his wife and son for supplies. Xingzi realized that he was put in a hopeless situation. Meanwhile, the fears of Xiao Yong and all the inhabitants of the fortress were confirmed. Everyone gathered in the infirmary to see everything with their own eyes.
Chang turned into a zombie and thrashed on the bed, trying to get out of his bonds.
The infirmary was filled with the boy's screams and growls, while the others did not utter a sound.
The boy's friends couldn't believe what happened to the boy.
Chang frowned at Chang and said that he needed to be killed. Xiao Yong glanced over his shoulder at the boy.
Xingzi asked Chang what he meant.
Chang said that Chang was already dead, but if he somehow escaped, all of them would be in danger.
Lin disagreed and said that they couldn't abandon their friend like that.
Xiao Yong looked at the boys and said that those infected had almost no chance of recovery. However, the guy had no intention of doing it himself. Xiao Yong took out a knife and handed it to Jiang, who was the one who first suggested killing Chang. The guy stepped back and asked what that meant, and then Xiao Yong reminded him that it was his idea.
Jiang looked at the knife and was shaking with fear.
Xiao Yong reminded him that it was Jiang who demanded the weapon from him, so he should take it and save his friend from suffering. However, at that moment, Jiangxi grabbed the knife. Xiao Yong let go of the weapon, completely trusting his longtime comrade in arms. Shaking with fear, Jiangxi looked at the knife and said that he would do it himself. Xiao Yong grabbed the knife blade and asked the guy if he was sure he hadn't deceived them. The guy said that just one step and Jiangxi could become a killer. Without thinking twice, Jiangxi replied that he completely trusted Xiao Yong. The guy smiled and said that in that case, they could begin. Jiangxi walked up to his friend lying on the bed and raised his hand holding a knife. It took him a while to gather his strength, but he finally decided to strike. The knife was stopped a few centimeters from the infected man's neck. Xiao Yong quickly walked up to Jiangxi and stopped his hand. The guy looked at him and asked why he did it. Xiao Yong looked at the message from the system and said that a rather specific situation had arisen, so they had to intervene. The system informed the guy that a rare mutant had been discovered. After some time, all the shelter residents came out of the infirmary on Xiao Yong's order. He was left alone with the infected man and watched him closely. Xiao Yong tried to talk to Chang, but he didn't answer, only grinning and growling. The guy hovered over the infected man and said that he had an important task for Chang. Meanwhile, Jiangxi was thinking about how to deal with the situation Tao had put him in. The man was racing his car through the city, trying to avoid all obstacles. However, he still managed to gain control and crashed into a pole. Jiangxi got out of the car and rubbed his bruised head, saying that he had no luck at all. He was glad at least that he managed to get to the right place. At that moment, a zombie crept up behind Jiangxi. The man put his hands in front of him, and the infected creature bit him on the forearm. Following her strength, Jiangxi pushed the zombie away from herself. The man immediately rushed to his car. Jiangxi grabbed the crowbar from the passenger seat, which he had brought with him in case he had to fight off the infected. The man barely had time to turn around and hit the zombie before it attacked him again. After knocking the infected to the ground, Zhangzi began to strike him in the head one after another until the zombie stopped moving. When everything was finished, the man looked around and thought that it was not worth lingering here.
After all the tension and pain, Zhangzi headed towards Xiaoyan's fortress.
Meanwhile, the corpses located at the gate came to life and began to walk near the walls of the fortress. Xiaoyan looked out over the fence through an additional door located on the opposite side from the main gate. The rest of the fortress's inhabitants followed him out with various weapons in their hands.
Shanshan looked at her protective clothing and told Xiaoyan that it was very uncomfortable to move in.
The guy replied that zombies are much stronger than normal humans, so they should wear protection until they get used to it. Peeking around the corner, Xiaoyan said that they could remove the protection when they were ready. The guy looked at the zombie and warned the rest of the group that they were now in the detection zone. Soon, the infected noticed the people, and Xiaoyan immediately reported this to the team. The guy reminded the team that they should cover each other but keep their distance. The zombie ran up to Xiaoyan, who was standing closest, but the guy managed to jump aside. The guy said they would have a chance to attack when the infected missed. Xiaoyan said to aim for the temple or the back of the neck, and Lin immediately tried it. However, the guy chose the wrong moment, causing the machete blow to hit the zombie's forehead. Lin immediately stepped back, crying out from the intense pain in his arm. Xiaoyan stood behind him and said that the zombie's skull was very hard, so trying to hit it could result in injury. The infected immediately rushed at Lin, but he held a machete in front of him. The zombie bit the machete blade, and the boy started asking someone for help. Xiaoyan praised Lin for how he defended himself and told Zhangxi to help his friend. The guy immediately ran up to the infected man from behind and prepared to strike him with a bat. As Xiaoyan said, Zhangxi hit the zombie on the neck, causing it to let go of Lin's machete. As soon as the infected man was on the ground, all three friends pounced on him, finishing him off.
As the zombie stopped moving, Zhangxi turned to Xiaoyan and asked how they did.
The fortress leader praised them for their work, but Zhangxi noticed how the infected was trying to attack the guy from behind. Zhangxi was too far away to help in time, so he could only shout to Xiaoyan in an attempt to warn him of the threat. The infected one was already too close and was preparing to bite Xiaoyan on the shoulder. However, the guy quickly turned around and grabbed the zombie by the head. Holding the infected man tightly, Xiaoyan reminded him that he must not be distracted under any circumstances until everything was cleared. Zhangxi gripped the bat tighter and nodded. Meanwhile, Zhangxi had almost reached the fortress and was looking at the walls from his hiding place. The man immediately noticed the infected scurrying around near the gate and thought that they might have already killed Xiaoyan. However, as he got closer, Xingzi unmistakably recognized the voice of the guy who was talking to someone. The man saw a car ahead and decided to hide behind it to see what was happening.
At this moment, Xiaoyang's team continued to get rid of the zombies.
Xingzi peeked out from behind the car and was surprised that Xiaoyan was still alive. However, the man was too careless and did not see the zombie lurking under the car. It was Shuya who had just now turned around and was heading towards Xingzi. The infected woman leaned out from under the car and grabbed the man by the leg. Xingzi lost his balance in fear and fell to the ground. Seeing the zombie, the man started screaming. The infected crawled out from under the car and rushed towards Shenzhen. The man already thought that this was how his life would end. But then the sound of a gunshot was heard. Dark blood splashed onto Xingzi's face. Behind the zombie stood Xiaoyan with a gun in his hands. Shenzi immediately threw off the infected woman's body. Xiaoyan lowered his weapon and asked what the man was doing there. Xingzi stood up and began to approach the guy, saying that he had never thought he would be able to get here. Xiaoyan immediately noticed that the man's forearm had been bitten. The veins had already begun to turn blue and swell due to the virus spreading throughout the body. Before the man got close enough, Xiaoyan pointed a gun at him and told him not to come any closer. Xingzi stopped and began to beg to be heard before shooting. Xiaoyan did not lower his gun and told him to speak but not to come closer.
Shenzhen said he knew he was infected and he didn't have half a day left.
The man said that Tao had kidnapped his wife and child and now wanted to use him to get Xiaoyang's supplies. Xingzi said that he was a bad person but his wife and child were not to blame for anything. The man asked for help in saving them, at least in gratitude for helping him collect supplies. Xiaoyang understood that Xingzi was doing all this only for his own benefit but his help was truly useful. The guy turned around and looked at his team. At the moment, there was a lot of space in the fortress but the balance was heavily skewed towards the men. At this moment, a system notification sounded and Xiaoyan became more interested in this matter. The system gave the task of clearing the area and taking care of Xingzi's wife and child, to which the guy immediately agreed. Hearing the agreement, Xingzi fell to his knees and began to say that he would not have time to repay for this favor in this life.
Bowing at Xiaoyang's feet, the man asked him to do him one more favor. Xingzi asked to kill him before he turned into a monster that would threaten his family. Xiaoyang looked at the man and thought about what to do.
The guy turned to Shan Shan and asked her to bring the bicycle from the warehouse. Xiaoyang said that Xingzi should go as far away as possible, avoid people and isolate himself. The man asked why the boy was doing this, to which Xiaoyang replied that there was no time to explain the reason for his actions. Xingzi sighed and said that he would do whatever the guy told him. After a while, Shan Shan brought the bicycle, and the man immediately left. He pedaled with all his might and thought only of his wife and son. One of his eyes turned red, and the white of it was completely covered in blackness. Meanwhile, Xiaoyang and his team finished clearing the area around the fortress. They gathered all the infected bodies into a pile and poured gasoline on it. Xiaoyang decided that it would be better to burn the bodies immediately. Black smoke rose into the sky from a huge fire. Watching the fire, everyone realized how tired they were that day. Xiaoyang said that they dealt with lone zombies in a group of 2 or 3 people with melee weapons without being injured. Before the team could start rejoicing, the guy said it was too little. Xiaoyang said that the guys were not ready to meet a group or a horde of zombies.
The guy turned around and told me to follow him.
After some time, they all found themselves near the warehouse. Xiaoyang called Grandpa Sheng over and told him that he would be heading to the city tonight. The boy handed the old man the key to the weapons room and said that the security of the fortress was now in his hands. Grandpa Sheng took the key and asked if it was really wise to go into the city alone when it was so chaotic. Zhang Shi and Ling immediately suggested going with Xiaoyang. The guy said that they weren't ready for it yet, so they would only get in the way. Having entrusted the guarding of the fortress to Grandfather Sheng, Xiaoyang got into the car and set off. The guy took a gun, a crossbow, and a machete with him. On the way, Xiaoyang looked into the system store and saw that it still hadn't been updated. The rescue mission was difficult, so the guy decided to upgrade the store for 2 points. Soon, Xiaoyang saw new items in the store, as well as the fact that the upgrade had become twice as expensive. The guy thought that he should be more careful with manual updates. Xiaoyang had enough points to purchase the dark technology box, which he did. When he received the box, a bright light appeared that blinded the guy. He soon saw that the box contained a serum that increased physical strength by 5 units. Xiaoyang closed his eyes and said it felt like he had thrown a flashbang grenade into his own face. The guy was very surprised by the serum he received, as it was significantly better than all those he had received previously. Xiaoyang decided to use it right away. The guy felt his numbers start to rise, but it wasn't the most pleasant feeling. Xiaoyang's strength level was now more than 2.5 times that of a normal person. With his new abilities, the boy went to Xingji's house, where Tao and his gang had settled. Xingji's wife and son were locked in the bedroom until the man returned. The mother tried to calm the child, saying that dad would definitely figure everything out. At that moment, the door to the room opened and Tao entered with one of his subordinates. Asu jumped up and asked why they came. Tao grabbed her hand and said that they came to have fun. The man tore the girl's blouse, accompanied by her loud screams. The bandits threw Asa to the floor, and Sha tried to push them away. At that moment, someone entered the room. It was a middle-aged man named Li who asked what all the noise was about. Seeing what was happening, he ordered them to stop, as they had not yet completed the task. Tao's assistant said there shouldn't be any problems. Li said that if Asu couldn't bear it and committed suicide, Xingji would have nothing to lose and would fight to the death. The man said they could have some fun after they dealt with her husband. Tao and his assistant decided to retreat, saying that Li had ruined their mood. Before leaving, Tao stuck his tongue out at Xingji's wife and said that they would be back soon. Trembling with fear, the girl first began to calm her son. It was deep into the night, but the streets were still unsettled. Zombies scurried through the streets and crashed into everything. Xiaoyang drove along the road and noted that his reaction and body control had noticeably improved after the injection. The guy easily drove around abandoned cars on the road, holding the steering wheel with only one hand. Xiaoyang noted that it was an incredible feeling. Gradually, the number of infected people increased, so the guy had to stop. The city center was ahead, and the car could attract a lot of attention, so he had to continue on foot. As Xiaoyang got out of the car, he heard the infected approaching him from behind. The guy turned around and saw 2 zombies running towards him. Xiaoyang waited until the first one ran close enough and dived to the side. The guy grabbed the zombie's shoulder with his hand and pulled sharply. The infected lost his balance and didn't have time to bite Xiaoyang.
The guy yanked the zombie by the shoulder with such force that it flew into the second infected.
Xiao Yong extended his hand with the ring forward and summoned the weapon from the storage. In an instant, the machete was in his hands. Xiao Yong pushed off the ground and rushed forward. It took the guy just 1 second to deliver 2 swift blows. A moment later, severed heads of the infected began to rain down on the ground. Xiao Yong noted that at the moment, he was completely superior to the current zombies in strength and reflexes, so he could now feel the difference. Even the boy's senses worked much better, so he was able to pick up voices in the distance. Xiao Yong looked in the direction where the sounds came from and guessed that the people were 800 meters away from him. The system immediately sent a notification that a random task had been received due to an unexpected meeting. 4 people were locked in one of the small shops. They barricaded the doors to keep the zombies out.
A teenage boy named Zishuan asked his father, Song, if they were really going to die here.
The father tried to calm his son down, saying that in that case, they would soon meet with their mother. But this did not calm the boy down. There was a police officer with them who told the man to watch his words, to which he replied that it was not in his power to do so. The policeman looked at the glass windows and doors and also began to think that death would take them today. The number of infected on the streets grew more and more. But at some point, strange sounds began to be heard. All the people locked in the store noticed this, but they couldn't understand what was happening. At some point, the head of the zombie standing closest to the door shattered into pieces. Zishuan and his father were frightened and jumped away from the glass. The zombie hit the glass and slowly slid to the ground, staining everything around with blood. For a while, there was complete silence, which the people in the store were afraid to disturb. The policeman was the first to speak up and told Zishuan and his father to remove everything from the entrance to unblock it. The father and son began to clear away the furniture, and the man stood with a gun at the ready and told them to be quiet. Son slowly removed the furniture from the passage, looking back at every rustle. After some time, the passage was unblocked, and the policeman was the first to look out onto the street. Following him came the father, son, and another girl, taking in their hands everything that could be used for protection. Seeing the dead zombies, Zishuan immediately said that it was done by mutants. Son asked what he was talking about, and then the guy said that mutated zombies always appear in different games and comics. The father got angry at the boy and said that he now understood why he had such bad grades in school. The policeman couldn't stand it any longer and told them to keep quiet and pay close attention to the situation, as now was not the best time for such conversations. The man told everyone to look in their own direction and move slowly toward the base. Stopping at the turn, the policeman told the team to stop and was the first to look around the corner. Around the corner, the man saw Xiao Yang standing in the middle of the road and not moving. Zishuan looked over the policeman's shoulder and said that it was definitely a mutant. The man said the stranger looked more like a survivor. Xiao Yang heard their conversation and, smiling, turned his head toward them and said that mutants are not so easy to meet these days. A smile appeared on the policeman's face when he realized that the boy did not pose a threat. The man approached Xiao Yang and said that it was dangerous to wander around alone now, so he invited him to come with them. The police officer said a small group of civilians had gathered in Zhongshan Garden while their team went out to get supplies. Xiao Yang immediately remembered that this garden was located near the Jinyu mansion. Sun suggested that the guy go with them, since the policeman had a gun so they could protect him. Xiao Yang smiled and decided not to refuse such an offer. The team, along with the guy, moved on. Song asked Xiao Yang if he wanted to meet someone important at Jinyu Mansion since he was interested in him. When the guy answered positively, the man asked if he was looking for a relative or a girlfriend. Song patted Xiao Yang on the shoulder and said that the old world had come to an end, so he should mentally prepare for the worst. The police officer said that even if the boy's relatives weren't killed by the zombie army, they could very well have been found by bad people. Xiao Yang didn't understand who exactly was being talked about and decided to clarify. Policeman Lee said that there was a group of bandits operating in the city who were killing people and stealing their supplies. The team of survivors had already met them and lost many people. But now the man did not want to talk about it. Zishuan saw the zombie approaching Lee and immediately told him about it. The man quickly turned around and saw the infected man, who was already close. At the last moment, Lee managed to shoot the zombie in the head twice. The man looked at the infected man and said that this was very bad. The shots attracted the attention of other zombies, so they will soon come for them. The policeman immediately began to look around to find something that would help them survive. Lee saw a bus nearby and immediately told everyone to run towards it. The team rushed forward before the infected filled the street. Xiao Yang thought that this was a good decision. But the downside was that they had nowhere to retreat.
Everyone ran into the bus and the last one left was the guy.
While Li was already waiting for him at the doors to have time to close them, Xiaoyan sped up a bit to get away from the zombie and crashed into the bus. Li immediately closed the doors and ordered everyone to check the seats to make sure no one was inside the car.
After checking the seats, Zishuan said that zombies had surrounded the bus.
The police officer said they had been running too slowly, which is why they were now trapped. The zombies crowded around the bus and hit it with their hands. There were more and more of them every minute. Soon they began to push against the doors of the bus, and Li could no longer hold them back alone. The door had already begun to open slightly when the man saw Xiaoyan reach out his hand towards the door. With one hand, without much effort, the guy slammed the door again. Li didn't understand where Xiaoyan got such amazing strength from. The guy said that he would hold the door and the others should break the windows and start fighting back. Li immediately ran to the remaining survivors and ordered them to act. Within moments, the bus windows were blown out. The bus was tall, so no matter how hard they tried, the zombies couldn't reach the windows. The surviving team members began to attack the infected. Sleep leaned out of the window and pierced the zombies' heads with rebar. The son and the girl held the man so that he would not fall out of the window, and Li stood behind him, ready to shoot at any moment. The man quickly counted the bullets and said that they were not enough to shoot all the zombies. At this moment, Xiao Yang called the policeman. The guy offered the man a crossbow, and he asked where he got it. Xiao Yang threw the crossbow to Li and lied that he had picked it up on the street when they were running away. The man didn't think about it and started shooting at the zombies. Now he and son acted faster. Soon, all the zombies surrounding the bus were killed. Once the area was cleared, the entire team went outside again. Zishuan said that the critical situation ended in their favor twice, and it was not a coincidence since they were the children of the fate of the apocalypse. Xiao Yang told them not to let down their guard again so that such stupid mistakes would not happen. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of Xiaoyang Fortress hoped that everything was going smoothly for the guy. Before everyone went to bed, Zhang put forward his candidacy for duty that night. Lin nudged his friend with his shoulder and asked where such enthusiasm came from. Zhang immediately became furious and told the guy to mind his own business. Lin asked why he was reacting so strongly to a simple question and went to his room. Grandpa Shang said that since the boy had volunteered, he could take it upon himself, and the rest should go home and rest. The old man said that they had nothing to worry about and that Zhang would wake them up if anything happened. Zhang spent some time on the watchtower and waited until all the inhabitants of the fortress fell asleep. Deciding that the time had come, the guy headed towards the rooms, saying that he needed to sort everything out before Xiao Yang returned. Grandpa Shang was sleeping in his room and had no idea about the boy's intentions. The old man placed the key to the armory next to his pillow. Grandpa Shang didn't wake up when the door to his room opened slightly. Zhang peeked into the room and quickly looked around for the key.